Texas comes off the bye week and travels to Houston to face off with the Cougars, a team they haven't played since 2002. Thanks for joining us here on the Horns 24/7 game preview. Our own Jeff Howe filling in for Mr. Chip Brown today. Jeff, thanks for being here. Let's take a quick look at this matchup heading into Saturday. As I mentioned, their last meeting in 2002, Texas won that one pretty handily, 41-11. Houston has not beaten Texas since 1991. The Longhorns have won the last three games in Houston. Jeff, coming into this game, Houston 3-3 overall in the season. They beat West Virginia 41-39 in probably the most thrilling way possible last week on a Hail Mary heave from Donovan Smith. And speaking of Donovan Smith, that's the first thing we're going to talk about. Houston's passing attack. Smith third in the Big 12 in passing yards behind Dillon Gabriel and Quinn Ewers. Houston as an offense has the number 34 passing offense amongst FBS teams. And they also have the leading receiver in the Big 12 in Samuel Brown. How much of a threat do you think that poses to this Texas defense, and what are the keys to stopping it?
First off, let's go back to 1991, Tommy. Do you have any knowledge of David Klingler and the Houston run and shoot offense from back in the day? Or is that a little out of your depth there? You weren't even a thought in this mortal world yet.
Was not a thought, wasn't even being close to a thought at that point. So I'll let you handle all of that.
Yeah, well, not quite the run and shoot, but Dana Holgerson's version of the air raid offense that he acquired under the he was an assistant at Texas Tech under Mike Leach coming up and has put it on his own spin on it. It's interesting. Donovan Smith isn't the type of quarterback you think would really operate this offense for Dana Holgerson. Texas saw him last year in Lubbock. Obviously, the fourth down success rate Texas Tech had in that game. He's a big 6'5", big hulking guy. Short yardage can get the job done, but his ability to throw the football and get the ball out of his hands quick, I think that is the path of least resistance, Tommy, for Houston in this game. You look at their perimeter guys. You mentioned Sam Brown. I know Matthew Golden had a hamstring injury last week against West Virginia, but assuming he's good to go, you've got Joseph Manjack, who also was involved in that Hail Mary. He tipped it. Stephon Johnson caught it. So got a really good, talented, productive group of Houston receivers. Look, Houston doesn't run the ball well anyway, and nobody's been able to really line up and just pound the ball right at Texas. Oklahoma had success with some quarterback run game and some draws with Dillon Gabriel and even some of his scrambles, but nobody's been able to line up and pound the ball at Texas. I think Dana Holgerson's fine with that. They'll even get the running backs involved in the passing game. Michael Laughlin's a tight end that transferred in from West Virginia, played for Dana Holgerson at West Virginia. He knows this offense. So you take all of that into consideration, Tommy. I think you're going to see Donovan Smith and those Houston receivers try to attack the perimeter, use bunch formations, do some different things in the pass game that have given Texas some issues, and see if they can make those Texas corners and safeties tackle in space. You look at where Texas got in trouble against Oklahoma. Go to the last drive of the first half and the last drive of the game. It was missed tackles and blown assignments in the secondary. I think if Houston's going to stay in this game and make a game of it going into the second half, it's going to have to be because their receivers and Donovan Smith won more battles against the Texas secondary than they will have lost.
And that's certainly not too far out of the picture. Texas has struggled against the deep ball this year. Overall, they've played pretty tight against the pass, but when throws go deep, it's sometimes they get behind them. Miscommunication. We saw it in the Oklahoma game. We saw it in the Kansas game. So we'll see if the Longhorns come out of the bye week a little bit tighter in the secondary. Going back to the offense, talking about the run game now for Texas has been phenomenal over the last couple of weeks. We saw the offensive line get nominated for the Joe Moore Award, on the watch list, for the Joe Moore Award earlier this week. Questions on the status of Jake Majors coming into this game. We'll hear more about that from Steve Sarkisian on Thursday. But the good news is our own insider, Chip Brown, reporting that Cole Hudson should be good to go for this game. He's their backup center. So should Jake Majors not be able to go, you can slide Cole Hudson in there and get him some snaps at center. And when it comes to Jonathan Brooks, he leads the Big 12 in rushing yards, has 4 straight 100-yard games. You have to think that Steve Sarkisian's probably going to lean on this a little bit going into this game. Obviously, we let Quinn Ewers let it sling. This is a Houston secondary that has given up a lot of big plays through the air. What are you expecting from the offensive line in this game, opening up gaps for Jonathan Brooks?
Yeah, Tommy, I just think Texas has to get back to being a physical team that gets the job done at the point of attack. That's really where the Oklahoma game offensively, Quinn Ewers did turn it over 3 times, even though one of those interceptions, do you really pin it on him with the ball to Ja'Tavion Sanders? But, they didn't dominate the line of scrimmage like I thought they would. I mean, they quite frankly, lost the line of scrimmage battle pretty handily to Oklahoma, which is a shame because you look at, late in the Alabama game, late in the Wyoming game, against Baylor, especially against Kansas, where Texas was just creating huge seams in the run game for Jonathan Brooks, and he had that 200-plus yard game against Kansas. For them to take a step back against Oklahoma was disappointing. So, look, this is a Houston defense struggles mightily to defend the run. They're giving up over 4 yards a carry. They're 93rd in the country in run defense. They don't stop the run very well. So this is good. This should be a really good week for Texas to get back to basics and get back to seeing if this offensive line can impose their will on an opponent, because the run game element, that opens up everything else in Steve Sarkisian's offense, whether you're talking about the play action passes, the RPO series, whatever it is. It's all predicated on being able to rely on your run game. Your run game doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be good enough for you to get to those other things. But against an opponent like Houston, an opponent where you should control the line of scrimmage, that to me is what I'm looking for, Tommy. I'm looking for the Texas offensive line, whether Jake Majors plays or not. But Kelvin Banks, Hayden Connor getting a week to rest up. He was banged up going into the bye week. DJ Campbell seems to be getting more comfortable. And then Christian Jones is quietly having a really good year out at right tackle. I'm looking for that group to really assert themselves and get back to being the group that it looked like they were trending toward going into the Oklahoma game.
And lastly, we'll go ahead and talk about some of the younger guys who have gotten an opportunity to play a little bit more here throughout the last couple of weeks. They have the extra bye week now to get a little bit more learning under their system and digest what they've seen through the past couple of games. Starting off with Malik Muhammad. He had to step up, especially against Oklahoma when Ryan Watts was unable to go. We'll see. We'll check on Ryan Watts' status coming into this week. Steve Sarkisian knocked himself after the Oklahoma game for not playing Jonte Cook more at wide receiver. Maybe that's a guy that we could see get an increase in snaps and targets throughout the second half of the season. And then lastly, Anthony Hill has played a lot, if not more, than any other true freshman so far for this Texas team. Is that a guy who can see even more snaps? Maybe he comes in more pass rush situations, kind of like we saw against Alabama. So when it comes to those younger guys, is there any one of those three, or maybe someone that I didn't mention, that you could see getting an increase in snaps in this game?
Yeah, I think you look at those three guys on defense specifically. Anthony Hill definitely is a pass rusher. You look at that Houston offensive line. I mean, their tackles have a track record of being really good pass blockers. But, Tommy, where things have kind of gotten off kilter for the Texas defense is when they haven't been able to get negative plays in the backfield, when they haven't been able to affect the quarterback. The two games that really stand out, you go back and watch the Alabama game and you go watch the Baylor game. Texas controlled the line of scrimmage. They made plays in the backfield. They got after both quarterbacks, Jalen Milroe at Bama and then Sawyer Robertson at Baylor. Didn't really do that against Wyoming. Didn't really do that against Kansas. And they got pressure on Dylan Gabriel, but they couldn't finish the play. So I think Anthony Hill as a pass rusher, I think he's earned the right to get more snaps. I think the same thing with Derek Williams at safety, especially if Jalen Catalon still isn't at 100%. Remember, he missed the second half of the Oklahoma game. I think the same thing for Manny Muhammad. But even if Ryan Watts plays, I think Malik Muhammad's a guy that you just kind of have to throw him in there and just gradually keep giving him more reps. He hasn't done anything, Tommy, that's just overly egregious to where you could pull back. The really interesting one to me, though, is Jonte Cook, because Sark has kept this wide receiver rotation pretty small. I mean, he's got those top four guys with Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, or the top three, with Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, and A.D. Mitchell. And we kind of been wondering, okay, who's going to be that fourth guy? Who's going to emerge? I mean, there was a point in camp where we thought it might be Casey Kane. I think by default, with him coming back, we thought maybe it's Isaiah Nair. But now I think it's pretty clear that Jonte Cook is going to be that fourth guy. And especially if Jatavian Sanders doesn't play or isn't at 100%, or maybe you pull him back a little bit this week, losing that pass game threat, this could be a really good week for Jonte Cook to dive in there head first and get more snaps than he otherwise would, and maybe get a few more targets than he otherwise would. So I know it doesn't make up for him not playing in the Oklahoma game for Sark, but at least you can redeem yourself a little bit and get number two the football. At least make that a focal point of what you're doing.
Yeah, that's what it's all about after the bye week, being able to redeem yourself and learn from the mistakes. So we'll see what Steve Sarkisian elects to do here come Saturday. And now, Jeff, everybody's favorite time of the week, it's time for our score predictions. I will let you go ahead and take the reins first.
Yeah, I'm thinking like a 41-17 type win for Texas, Tommy. I think, Texas defensively, they really want to make opponents one-dimensional, and we've seen, even the Wyoming game, where they kind of struggled early a little bit. It felt like the first 3 quarters of that game were a feeling out process for both teams. And even you look at the end of the Alabama game when Alabama had to be one-dimensional. If Texas makes you one-dimensional and guys like Anthony Hill and Barron Sorrell can tee off, that's not a place you want to be as an opponent. I think it's really easy for Houston to fall into that because naturally they are one-dimensional. They don't really run the football all that well, and they've got actually the third fewest carries in the Big 12, the third fewest rushing attempts in the Big 12. So if they want to play one-dimensional football, I think that's right up Pete Kwiatkowski's alley. That's when they could really dial up the pressure. That's where they can force turnovers. And like if Texas isn't scoring against this Houston defense, which let's be honest, Tommy, there's not a lot they do really well, then we're having an entirely different conversation come Sunday morning. But I think the offense clicks. I think they at least start to figure out some things in the red zone. But what I'm really looking forward to get for this game to get out of hand is that Texas defense. If they can get a lead to where Houston becomes a one-dimensional offense, that's just Pete Kwiatkowski should be salivating for that opportunity.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm not too far off from here in my score prediction. I went 35-17 Texas. Like you mentioned, I think this is a game where Steve Sarkisian kind of flexes his muscles a little bit. I predicted earlier in our mailbag that he's going to let it fly with Quinn Ewers is going to let it fly with 3 or more touchdowns through the air. I think Jonathan Brooks has another great game, just establishing the run game. But this is a game where Texas has the opportunity to turn the corner in the red zone. I think it's almost undoubted that they'll be able to get there in those situations. So I'll be keeping my eye on. Can they convert? Can they be able to get touchdowns instead of field goals? That touchdown to field goal ratio is way closer to 50% on both sides than it should be. It should be more of like a 75-80 to 25-20 if you're looking at a successful team in the red zone. So that's what I'm keeping my eye on. And I think a lot of people look at that Oklahoma game and forget how good this Texas defense was throughout the first 4 weeks of the season or 5 weeks of the season coming into that. I think they remind everyone on Saturday as well. And, not to say that Houston's offense won't be able to get things going, but they're not going to be able to score a bunch of points like they did against West Virginia. So 35-17 is my score prediction. And so there you have it. That's the Horns 24/7 game preview for this week as the Longhorns head off the bye and travel down to H-Town. Jeff and I will be there at Tedecchi Stadium on Saturday for a 3 p.m. Central Time kickoff. Look forward to having you all join us on the Instant Reaction Show after the game, and as always, the post-game analysis segment coming up later that week as well. I want to thank you so much for being here with us on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you're the first to know when new content heads your way. For Jeff Howe and the rest of the crew at Horns 24/7, my name's Tommy Yarsh. Thanks again for being with us, and we'll see you next time.